Tom, we're going in about 5 minutes, okay?
Okay.
All right. Well, hi, welcome back, everybody. Here we are back for the last meeting of 2020. Can you believe it? We've all made it. We've made it this far anyway. Hey, just a quick note. I wanted to remind all of you, keep your mics muted until we get to the question and answers at the end with Tom. And we're so looking forward to this. So I trust you're all warm and healthy out there as we are here. And thank you for all your wonderful emails that you've been sending me. I so appreciate that. I love hearing from you and I love getting back to you. If I haven't gotten back to you, don't take it personally. It's just been, I've been busy, but I will get to you. Thank you. Keep those cards and letters coming, as they used to say before the days of internet, of course. I truly do love being a part of all of this and taking your questions. And somebody said, oh, my question's probably stupid. There really is no stupid question. I appreciate them all. So bring them on. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. And we've got so much going on tonight, so much to discover. Our MUFON meetings here are all about the world's oldest and largest UFO reporting agency in the world, and as well as discovering all the different things that come into us from our CMS. We have so much to share with you and are so looking forward to doing that. You might want to be a field investigator. You might want to know more about MUFON, and you've got my email up. You can always email me questions that maybe we don't get to cover in this segment tonight. But we would like to invite you to become UFO field investigators, and that's what we do here, as well as educate you on some of the things that are going on currently in the ufology field. So here with MUFON, you'll also discover where to find exclusive UFO videos and things like that, media, hours of new interviews, and symposiums and conferences that are being held, as other exciting content. So we have a wonderful meeting planned for tonight, including a great speaker, author, and MUFON board member, Tom Whitmore. And so let's get started so we can hear all about his MJ12 current research, because it really is so interesting. Okay, so who are we? What is MUFON? MUFON is the Mutual UFO Network, and we were started in 1969. We're the oldest and largest UFO investigative organization in the world, with a huge member base adding to it daily. We're represented in all 50 states and 40 countries with thousands of
Hey, Tom, this is Chris France. I don't know if you realize this or not, but we have lost Terry, I think. And it looked like you were listed as the host now.
My screen went blank. Now I lost Terry.
Yeah, we're not able to see her or hear her either, although we could hear you, or at least I could hear you.
Who am I speaking with?
Oh, sorry about that, Tom. My name is Chris France.
Okay. Are you an administrator on the system?
Nope, not at all. Just a happy participant.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've lost Terry, and then it's asking me to admit people that are coming into the waiting room.
I wonder if she had made you perhaps co-host and then her connection dropped, possibly.
Can you see me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Okay. Maybe I better call her. Terry, we've lost you. My screen went blank, and now I'm talking to somebody, talking to a participant in the group, and then I'm getting messages to admit people into the waiting room. So things have gone haywire.
Tom, a person in chat just mentioned something, and they're making a good point, is since it's now appearing that you are acting as the host, if Terry's trying to get back in, you might have to admit her, but I don't know if you can see who it is that's coming in.
how do I unmake myself as a host?
Well, I think we want to keep you as a host for the moment, because are you familiar with Zoom at all?
A little bit, but I'm not expert. But see,
Yeah.
when I first came in here, just Terry and Kevin were listed, and now I don't see Terry at all.
Yep, she's gone for the moment. So if you go down to the bottom of your screen, you look for the entry that's called participants, it'll open up a window to the right of your screen. And
Yeah.
from there, it should show you who's waiting to be admitted. And if you admit those folks, they'll be able to come into the meeting, and Terry might be one of them.
I'm not seeing a list of people to be admitted. I'm seeing a list of participants.
Okay. Yep. And if
She's not
you,
one.
oh boy. So the only other choice that I can think, well, there's two other choices I can think of, and one is kill the whole meeting, and I think you're the only person who would be able to do that, and then let Terry restart it. Were you able to reach her?
No, I got her voicemail.
Okay. God, maybe she lost power or something, but so the other possibility is try to make another person a co-host and see if we can admit people to come in.
Well, I'm getting messages as people come in, okay, and I'm admitting them.
Oh, you are? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just Terry's not one of them. Okay, I see.
And it's showing me as a host. I don't know how I became a host. I never asked to be.
Well, I think what probably happened is Terry or the person who was helping her probably made you a host or a co-host so that you would be able to show like PowerPoint slides or show things on your screen. That's a guess on my part.
Yeah. Let me try to call her again.
Okay.
I got her voicemail again.
Yeah, that is really odd. So this is being recorded at this point, just FYI. I mean, I can see that up there.
Should I stop that if I can?
My guess is yes, because until we get Terry back in, or
Do you have Kevin's number?
Kevin.
Her husband?
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't.
Hi, Terry. Terry? Terry?
God, I don't know.
Yeah, I know. My screen went blank,
Almost.
and then I started getting messages of people wanting to join, which I've been admitting, and then it's showing me as a host, as the host, and then you're not listed in the participants. But I'm talking with Tammy. Is that your name, Tammy? I'm sorry, who am I speaking with?
This is Chris France.
Okay. Okay.
You just put me down and type, okay? Hopefully you'll see me come back up.
Are you guys having a storm or something?
No, but it is raining, but we're not having a storm.
Do you have satellite Wi-Fi?
Pardon me?
Is your Wi-Fi
How did
by,
you get to be the host? I don't know how you could have gotten to be the host. That's like very suspicious.
is your Wi-Fi by satellite dish?
No,
Okay.
he said it's our Wi-Fi satellite dish, but it's not. So at what point did you lose me? What was I saying?
You were just going through your introduction, and then you went blank, and then I started getting notices that people are trying to join, and then I started looking at the participants. You weren't in there, but I was a host, or I am a host.
So now you're the host, okay? Huh? Are you still doing the meeting?
What do you mean?
Just do your presentation without me. Just do your presentation. If you're the host, do the presentation. Let everybody in. Are you on screen? Is everybody else on screen with you?
Yes. Yes.
We're being targeted.
Well, shouldn't we start off?
Go ahead and run the show. Run the show, Tom.
Shouldn't we start all over?
Well, we could start all over, but it says new meeting. Do you want to do a new meeting, honey? We would have to resend invitations and everything. Can you let me into your meeting?
Well, you're going to have to request to come in.
Yeah, you'll have to go ahead and invite me. Oh, I have to. How can I? Send an invitation to keelmedia@gmail.com. KEHL Media. And I think you have mine. That is too funny. Someone's playing.
Keel Media at what now?
Gmail.com. Go ahead and talk to your people and tell them, hold on, we're working it out. Make your popcorn now.
Okay, I sent it to you. It's KEHL.
Yes. Media.
Yeah.
Definitely hitting right over top of this. So your flags here, how long exactly, and immediately enough, it's the same orientation as Bill's original burrow. If we keep the UFO crash site in mind, it's like something in here, maybe there was slightly more. Bill was on enough to cause that mechanization, but maybe there's just slightly.
Is your internet working? No.
No, it's not letting us connect. Our connections are all failed. Somebody shut us down. Wonder who that was.
I don't know how they could do that. Well, then there's,
They just did. Everybody else is up and running. You are now the show host and we can't connect. What the heck? Yeah, we were connected the whole time that we were with you. Everything was fine. No internet secure.
Would it be possible for Terry to like register for the meeting and then get one of the independent invitations in her email and join that way, even if she can't join as the original host?
Well, hold on a second. The problem is their internet is down.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Sorry,
Yeah,
didn't
'cause
realize it.
I sent her an invite and they haven't even gotten that. You know, once she gets the invite, then I can let her back into the
I
meeting.
gotcha. Okay.
So are you guys trying to restart the internet, or is it still saying that you can't connect?
And he's trying to do that. He keeps trying to do, it's telling us that we're connected, but then
Again,
we're connected with no internet. So this is some type of internet security.
Would it make sense to unplug something and plug it back in? Or?
we will begin training to go to war.
Well, he's gonna go reboot the router. So let them know. Now we're in the studio, which is not that close to the house. So he's gotta run all the way into the rain to the house, and then he has to go upstairs to where the router is. And he'll have to reboot it up there and reset.
Okay,
So,
let me send a message to everybody, okay?
okay, just say that he's rebooting and we're gonna restart.
Okay,
Make the popcorn.
okay, hold on.
Okay.
Don't hang up, okay?
I'm not gonna hang up.
Hello?
Okay, Kevin is back.
Okay, I
Are you
did.
still with me, John?
Yeah, I did send you an email to, to send you the invitation.
Oh, okay. Oh, please tell everyone how sorry I am that this is happening.
I told them that your studio lost internet connection and that Kevin was rebooting
Okay.
the router.
Okay, great. Thank you.
High stakes spends with Dr. Pepper.
Take us through what happened. We've also lost all of our heat.
Did you have a power outage?
No, I just don't have any heat out here.
So what's the news from Kevin?
What story time was that? What was that?
What's the news from Kevin?
He is at the hill at the moment, and it looks like it's saying it's connected with the checking network clearance, connected and secure. So, see if we can get back into the meeting. He's trying to connect. Did you know that it's not connecting? Did you go there into email to the invitation? Okay, he's bringing that up. He's trying to meeting in progress. There we go. Are people still able to join the meeting on your end?
Yes.
Oh, good.
But I haven't seen the request from you yet.
It's not coming up. We went to, we have to reboot the switch in here now. We'll see if that'll do it. Oh, you can hear me talking to Tom. Well, now that brings up an interesting, how about if they can hear me, I can't do my slides, but perhaps I can, if they can hear me,
No, they
I
can
can talk to you.
they can hear you because I've got you on speaker on my phone and I'm unmuted.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, I'm not sure where I lost you, but instead of us doing our regular, meeting, maybe we could do it this way, the new way, the only way we have available.
Well, what you could do,
And,
Terry, you could go into your phone, pull up email on your phone and enter the meeting that way from the email.
just do what, Kevin? Okay, or Kevin said we can just do it. Without the slides, it's not, do you have slides as well?
No.
Okay. All right, so let's see. To bring it up on here, Kevin, can you help me? I don't know how to do that on this. Bring up United MUFON on this. On the phone.
Just go to your email on your phone.
Yeah, I don't think I have Zoom installed on here. Go to my email. Okay.
Irregular heartbeat or other heart rhythm problems. Possible side effects include muscle and joint pain. Smith is meeting with Joe Russell, the reclusive grandson of Mac Russell. The Frencher first stumbled upon the mysterious crash debris at Roswell, but never spoke publicly about how the Army threatened him into silence. He said he gave his word that he wouldn't talk. Sister, you tell this piece of S word that I would personally never word him up.
Monsieur, ce monsieur vous envoie personnellement vous faire F.
Tu veux que ce putain de nègre de corner se source? Il s'est nègre.
He used the N-word again, but this time he mentioned your grandmother.
You tell him that his mama's an H. Got it. I believe Holt spelled with a W. Right. W, and his sister's a W, and his grandmother's a two-bit W. Who makes double because he got no teeth? You tell him I said that.
Il dit que votre sœur est une fille qui gagne double parce qu'elle n'a pas de temps.
Et son petit copain là, qui était une grande pauvre vieille, un sale pédé, et il tapait de tabou. Il said again,
No, this time he called this gentleman a word that means cat and another word that rhymes with mat.
what? Well, you tell him, he said, A-W. Lee, always spelled with H.
I have a dictionary.
Tom Boylan, can you hear us?
Yes.
Can you mute at the bottom? Because we can hear your television set.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll do that now.
That's okay, thanks.
Okay, Terry, unmute yourself. You're muted, Terry.
Unmute. Okay.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay. So let's see. So we can't see any of the slides that we were doing. Welcome back, everybody, or I should say, I should be welcoming everybody back. Let's see. How do we want to do this? I can do your bio and then have you share, because what you're sharing is just so amazing. It's wonderful.
Okay.
Okay, so if you would like to share, I'll just do your bio for you. And I apologize to all of you. I don't know what happened. We had full connections. We've been doing this for a couple hours actually. And all of a sudden everything just shut off. So I'm not, just not sure what happened. But at any rate, welcome. And I'm going to introduce Tom so he can share with you the history of the MJ12 controversy presentation, which he is doing tonight. And what that covers is what is MJ12, the emergence of the MJ12 controversy in the 1980s, and how the MJ12 controversy persists to this day. And before MJ12, he'll talk about, and some theories and unanswered questions. Am I back up? No. Oh, okay. I'm back up on the big screen there, so I didn't know. Okay, so Tom has been a longtime MUFON board member since 1995, actually, and he's originally from Tulsa. He graduated from Tulsa with a degree in business administration from Portland State University and had a career in the financial industry since the 1970s. He was most recently employed as a financial analyst with a local firm in San Antonio, where he retired in 2019. Well, congratulations. That's a wonderful
Thanks.
accomplishment. He's an accomplished guitarist and has a grown daughter. Tom was invited to join the MUFON board in '95 and experienced the organization's progress through the successive administrations of Walt Andrus, John Schuessler, James Carrion, Clifford Clift, David McDonald, Jan Harzan, and again now Dave McDonald. He serves as treasurer and focuses on long-term and strategic issues for the organization. Tom has been fascinated by military and intelligence agencies' interactions with the UFO public. He has undertaken a research study of UFOs with the history of the MJ12 controversy and intends to eventually publish his own findings. He participates in discussions on the MJ12 topic by giving presentations to local UFO groups, appearing on internet podcasts and radio shows, and by communicating in social media. And he's making history tonight doing this on a cell phone with his host, who he is now the host. Crazy world. 2020, huh? He is currently residing in the Washington, D.C. area in order to conduct documentary research at the National Archives and the Library of Congress. He recently published a paper titled MJ12, The Counterintelligence Angle, on tomwhitmoreblog.wordpress.com. So you'll want to go there. And let me just say that again. It's his name, Tom Whitmore, blog.wordpress.com. Okay, so take it away.
Okay, thank you, Terry, and thank you for having me on United MUFON tonight. It's
Thanks
a privilege for me to be here.
Okay.
In talking about MJ12, I want to make some important distinctions. My interest is historical. I'm interested in the history of the MJ12 affair, and I want to draw that distinction away from the MJ12 controversy. Now, the MJ12 affair is, it deals with the people and the events that have happened over a period of time starting about 1980. it goes up to the present day. And in studying the history of the affair, I'm not necessarily J12 exists. I'm not saying that they do, and I'm not saying that they don't exist, but I'm looking at the historical record as best I can. And as for the truth or falsehood of a possible MJ12 group, through my own study and analysis, I'm going to let the chips fall where they may. Now, the MJ12 controversy involves the content and the circumstances surrounding the MJ12 documents themselves. Now, it's important to understand that the MJ12 documents are questioned. They're questioned papers. When you look at them, they, for the most part, look official. They look like they're official government documents, but they're not, because almost all of the MJ12 documents that I refer to in my study arose anonymously. We don't know where they came from. They appear in somebody's mailbox. They appear on the internet. They arise out of claims that certain people are making. And so what we're dealing with when we look at the history of the MJ12 affair is we're looking at a lot of questionable documents and questionable circumstances surrounding those documents. And the reason why this is interesting to me is because I've always liked history, and I've been reading history books since I was a young person, by the time I was a teenager. And in the 1980s, I got interested in espionage. And I had been reading heavily about the history of the Soviet Union and the kind of espionage and secret police that they had. And when the MJ12 controversy arose, and I saw the MJ12 documents, my very first impression was that this had something to do with espionage, one way or another. I didn't know how. And so because of the history of this whole affair, starting around 1980, and actually up to the present time, it's been a history of interaction between these claims and certain people that have been involved and the documents themselves. And it's an interaction with all of that with the UFO community. And the developments that arose out of all of this have affected the UFO community very, very heavily. Okay. Now, I'm kind of an old guy. I'm 67 years old. Okay. So I grew up in the 1950s and 60s. I'm a child of the Cold War. So I saw the amount of press that UFOs were getting back in the 60s and even into the 70s. And maybe some of the younger generation coming up now, if they're not as aware of the UFO history in the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s, they might come into the UFO field seeing a lot of conspiracy theories. A lot of conspiracy theories in the UFO community. And if we go back into UFO history, back into the 50s, there was a certain amount of conspiracy thinking among UFO groups back then, because there was some mistrust of the United States Air Force and even the US government, because a lot of people in the UFO community back in those days, they felt that the government, and especially the Air Force, wasn't being straight with the public about what they knew about UFOs. So we have this situation where we've had documents that have been coming into the public domain that look official. They're very interesting. They have a lot of intriguing content, but they're questioned and they're questionable. Now, this whole thing started back in the 1980s, and there were certain intrigues that were occurring around Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Basically, what was happening was there was a person by the name of Paul Benowitz who lived right next to Kirtland Air Force Base. And he was a scientist. He was scientifically trained. Well, as a result of several developments in the 70s, he began basically surveilling Kirtland Air Force Base. And he saw, or he thought he saw, saucer-shaped craft at night in different parts of the base around the Manzano weapons storage area and in an area known as Coyote Canyon. Well, at the time that this began to take off in 1980, Paul Benowitz had approached the personnel at Kirtland Air Force Base, and they met with him and listened to him. But it became apparent that Paul Benowitz was taking photographs, he was taking movie film, he was taking scientific measurements, and maybe monitoring electronic signals on Kirtland Air Force Base. Now, Kirtland Air Force Base at that time, and probably still today, they were doing a lot of really sensitive stuff. And I won't go into all the sensitive programs that we're doing. I don't know them all, but they were working with lasers. They were even reprogramming Soviet satellites. And that's just a couple of things that were going on at the same time. So the base security and the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, who handles counterintelligence matters, they became very concerned. And what they did was, instead of calling Paul Benowitz in and asking him to please lay off and sign some non-disclosure agreements, what they did was they set up a program where they diverted his attention from Kirtland Air Force Base to an area known as the Dulce, New Mexico area, the Archuleta, which is namely Archuleta Mesa. And Paul Benowitz was allowed to become to believe that there was an underground base at Archuleta Mesa. And the person that has been tagged with being involved with Paul Benowitz is this person by the name of Richard Doty. And Richard Doty was, he was actually an Air Force Office of Special Investigations special agent on Kirtland Air Force Base. And he was the main go-to person that interacted with Paul Benowitz. Well, while all this was going on, a UFO researcher by the name of William Moore, who had written a book with Charles Berlitz known as the Roswell Incident, had, according to Moore, been recruited by AFOSI. And he was recruited by AFOSI to, one, inform on Paul Benowitz, two, to inform on certain other people in the UFO community and on certain UFO groups. And the deal was, at least according to Moore, that he was doing this in exchange for quote unquote inside information that the government had about the government's secret knowledge of UFOs. And William Moore was an excellent investigator, highly intelligent, and his goal was to see how much he could learn about what the government really knew in secret about UFOs, maybe recovered UFOs, alien bodies, extraterrestrial biological entities, and so on and so forth. So this set the stage for what became known as the MJ-12 affair. And what happened was Bill Moore was asked to pass a document to Paul Benowitz, which I will get into a little later. But in this process of Bill Moore cooperating with AFOSI and possibly one or more other government agencies, he received what has become known as the MJ-12 documents. He and his research partner, Jamie Chandray, received a set of documents in the mail, and they were actually on a roll of 35 millimeter film. And they received these in December of 1984. And they have become known as the MJ-12 documents. What they consisted of was what is become what we call the Eisenhower briefing document and the Truman-Forrestal memo. And on the Eisenhower briefing document, it purportedly is a briefing for President Eisenhower that was prepared by Rear Admiral Roscoe Hillenkoetter in December of 1952 in preparation for Eisenhower taking office in January 1953. And the document outlined how a flying saucer had been recovered in Roswell, New Mexico, and how a second saucer had been recovered on the Texas-Mexico border. And as a result, now this is how the story goes according to the content of the document. As a result of this UFO being recovered, this special committee was formed. And the second document in this group is known as the Truman-Forrestal memo, and it purports to be an authorization by President Truman to, who at that time was Secretary of Defense, James Forrestal, in 1947, to form this Operation Majestic 12. And Operation Majestic 12 consisted of 12 highly placed military, government, and scientific personnel that were tasked to study the recovered material, the flying saucers and the bodies, and to engage in other activities such as monitoring public perceptions and even managing public perceptions of the UFO problem. So these are the basics of the first part of the MJ-12 affair. Now, in telling you that and in talking about what went on during this period, MJ-12 affair in the 1980s basically went from about 1980 through 1989. But it's my contention that the MJ-12 affair is still going on to this day. And let me tell you why. In the 1980s, the certain MJ-12 documents came into play, known as the Aquarius Telex, the Carter briefing document, the Cutler-Twining memo, the Eisenhower briefing document, and the Truman-Forrestal memo. And later on, in the later 1980s, there was a TV program that was shown called UFO Cover-Up Live. And then in the very late 1980s and early 1990s, we had Robert Lazar, and I'm sure that most of us, if not all of us, have heard of Bob Lazar, and we heard about his claims. But then in the 1990s, a person by the name of Timothy Cooper received a large number of documents from a couple of sources that he's never disclosed. And I'll discuss those a little bit later. Then also during the 1990s, another document arose known as the Psalm 1-01 manual. And it's purportedly a manual that instructs personnel on how to handle recovered UFOs and bodies. Then also in the 1990s and early 2000s, we had another set of claims by a person that went by the name of Dan Burrish. And Dan Burrish is an analog of Bob Lazar. His claim is that he was a microbiologist, scientist who was helping an alien who was a guest of the United States government, probably at quote unquote Area 51. And he was tasked with helping this alien whose nickname was J-Rod. So we had that. Then in the 2000s, we had the Serpo affair. And then as late as 2017, another document came out on the internet that I refer to as the ultra top secret document. So even in the last few weeks, if I have my chronology right, I was watching Linda Howe give her presentation, and she's sitting there waving another thick document that she says is an MJ12 document that she got from one of her sources. So my point is simply this. The MJ12 affair, by my definition, is going on up to the present time. Now, I mentioned some of the participants in the MJ12. I mentioned William Moore, and William Moore was a school teacher from Pennsylvania, and in the 1970s, he decided to become a writer, and he was published along with a co-author by the name of Charles Berlitz, and Charles Berlitz was associated with the Berlitz language courses. And they came out with a book called The Philadelphia Experiment. And then in the late 1970s, Bill Moore, in association with Stan Friedman, did a lot of research and interviewed a lot of people about the Roswell incident. And they came out with this book known as the Roswell Incident, and that came out in 1980. Now, I think that this is associated, it's linked, and it's connected with the MJ12 affair. And, we have to realize that this was going on. There were a lot of other things going on as well. And, but this was very important. And it was at the time that Moore was promoting his book and going around to radio stations. Of course, back then they didn't have the internet, and you couldn't go on Zoom. You'd actually go on terrestrial radio stations. And he got a couple of phone calls, and he was apparently recruited probably by AFOSI. So we had William Moore. Then we had Richard Doty. And Richard Doty, as I mentioned, was an Air Force office of Special Investigations, special agent. He was employed in that capacity from 1979 through I think 1986 or 88. And then the interesting thing about Richard Doty is that he's still around today. He's given many internet interviews. In fact, I've taken extensive notes on 13 interviews that he's given. And he's getting ready to come out with a book. Now, after a long last, after being involved in this in the 1980s, he's now finally coming out with a book that apparently is going to tell his side of the story. And in giving all of these interviews, he has been trying to explain this whole story, at least from his side of it. In addition to Richard Doty, we have what was known as the Aviary. And what the Aviary was, they were a collection of contacts that Bill Moore had in his investigations and trying to learn more about what the government knew about UFOs. And the reason why they're called the Aviary is because Bill Moore, in order to maintain security, assigned bird names to these contacts that he had. Bird names like pelican and condor and falcon and chickadee and, bird names like that. So if he was talking on the phone, he would refer to falcon or condor or chickadee. so that you wouldn't necessarily know who he was referring to. But most of the people that are in this so-called aviary group are known now, and you can see that list on the internet if you want to look for it. And of course, Stanton Friedman was a very important person in all this. And even though he wasn't listed as an aviary member, he was instrumental in helping with research on the Roswell incident. And he was very active in researching documents from the National Archives. He tipped Bill Moore and Jamie Chandray off on a large release of documents at the National Archives in 1985. And then he had been a vociferous proponent of the truth of the MJ-12 reality. And I've actually sat down with Stanton Friedman and looked at him eye to eye, man to man, and asked him some very directed questions. And it's kind of funny because I would point out something important and he would just shrug his shoulders and say, well, it doesn't matter because MJ-12 is real. Now, we also had critics. When the MJ-12 documents came out in 1987, obviously they were subjected to a great amount of scrutiny. And naturally, Phil Klass, who was a big debunker at that time, came out against the MJ-12 documents. Also, some very capable UFO documentary researchers, such as Barry Greenwood and Brad Sparks, took a very hard look at the MJ-12 documents. So as soon as the MJ-12 documents came out in 1987, they were subjected to a lot of scrutiny, and the MJ-12 controversy began. So, I want to talk about the criticism of these documents because they really have been our briefing document, which purports to be a briefing for President Eisenhower before he took office. The document was allegedly prepared by Roscoe Hillenkoetter. Well, Roscoe Hillenkoetter, at the time that the briefing took place, was a rear admiral, but on the document, he's referred to as admiral. Now, for us little old civilians like me, I've never been in the military or in the government or in the intelligence world. You look at that document, it looks official, but if you understand how the military works, you would never refer to a rear admiral as an admiral, okay? That's one criticism that arose. Another criticism that arose with this document was the date format. In government documents, and I've looked at many hundreds of government documents at the National Archives, but today's December 19, 2020. So in government format, you would see 19 space December 2020. But in normal date format, like what normal people use, you'd have December 19, 2020. Well, in the Eisenhower briefing document, it was a different date, but if we were using today's date, it would be 19 December, 2020. Well, this is very unusual. I've looked at 100, and other people pointed this out. It wasn't my discovery, but you can look at hundreds of government documents and you won't see that date format. So that's one criticism of the Eisenhower briefing document. The Truman-Forrestal memo, which purports to be an authorization by President Truman to James Forrestal, who was the Secretary of Defense at the time, authorizing the establishment of Operation MJ-12. They found that the Truman signature on that document exactly matched another signature. And forensic document examiners will tell you that it's extremely unlikely that two signatures would match exactly. And the conclusion that critics came to from that was that they lifted, Truman's signature was lifted from another document and then cut and pasted onto the Truman Forrestal memo. Another famous MJ-12 document is the Cutler-Twining memo. And this document was discovered in July of 1985. And interestingly, Stanton Friedman told Bill Moore that, hey, the Air Force is getting ready to declassify a lot of documents. And you all might want to go out to the National Archives and check it out. Well, Bill Moore and Jamie Chandray went to the National Archives in July of 1985, and they went through what is known as Record Group 341. I think they went through something like 40 boxes. And in one of those boxes, there was a document stuck between two file folders. And that document is now known as the Cutler-Twining memo. And that the Cutler-Twining memo was purportedly an instruction from Robert Cutler to Nathan Twining to attend an MJ-12 Special Studies Project meeting, which would go on during the regular meeting with President Eisenhower rather than afterwards. And that document had been scrutinized and criticized because there's no signature on the document, for one thing, and it's allegedly a carbon copy. So, that was criticized. Then let's talk about Bob Lazar. Stanton Friedman really took the lead on checking into Bob Lazar's background, and he was unable to establish that Bob Lazar had any of the academic credentials that he claimed. So this cast a shadow on Bob Lazar's claims. We take the Timothy Cooper documents. Now, there were a whole lot of these documents involved with Timothy Cooper. And some of these papers looked interesting. Other ones had all kinds of misspelled words and poor English, and they were very suspicious looking. And even at the time, during the 1990s, early 2000s, Timothy Cooper, who lives in California, he took one or two lie detector tests and he failed. And he gave the reason that he failed because he was trying to protect his sources, but that didn't help his credibility. Also in the 1990s, the Psalm 101 manual came out into the public domain. And interestingly, it was received by Don Berliner, who is a UFO investigator and aviation writer, but it was received very similarly to the way Bill Moore and Jamie Chandray received the original MJ-12 documents. In other words, it came in on a roll of film, and the roll of film was developed, and on the developed film was the Psalm 101 manual. Now, the person that's really taken the lead in criticizing this is Jan Aldrich, and Jan Aldrich had a career in the U.S. Army, so he was familiar with government documents and Army manuals, and you can go on the internet and find his criticisms of the Psalm 101 manual, and they are numerous. Then we have the Dan Burrish claims. Now, there have not been a lot of documents coming out from the Dan Burrish camp, but I, Tom Whitmore, have received one, and I received it through MUFON auspices, basically from Robert Wood. And the reason why I received it is because Dan Burrish, being a purported biologist, scientific molecular biologist or biochemist or whatever, had written, they had this document and it looked and sounded technical. Well, I have a person very close to me that is a PhD molecular biologist. So I volunteered to get this paper checked out. Well, this person reviewed this document, which appears to be a technical report, and it has all kinds of things wrong with it. So here we are, still another document with a lot of things wrong with it. Then you take SERPO. SERPO was a story about an exchange program between US astronauts and our good buddies, the ETs. And these American astronauts traveled to the planet SERPO, lived there for 10 years or so, and most of them came back, not all of them. And this story came out on the internet through a lot of episodes that were published on the internet. You can go to the internet site and see all of the installments of the story. And the story, if true, if only partly true, is sensational, to say the least, okay? But it's so sensational and so out there that people naturally are skeptical of it. And Richard Doty has gotten blamed for it. He denies that he has anything really to do with it, but that's just another sequence of Richard Doty being associated with something questionable there. And then finally, we had the ultra top secret document that came out in 2017 from a radio host. And I got a copy of this document, and in the table of contents, it has a section, History of MJ12. So I go right to this section and I start reading it. It says MJ12 would meet at Flat Rock, Nevada at a decommissioned, it's either Marine or Naval Air Station. Well, I go to the maps and I start looking for Flat Rock, Nevada. And I look on state maps, and I look on highway maps, and I look on geological survey maps, and I look on maps of the atomic testing range. No Flat Rock, Nevada. I can't find Flat Rock, Nevada anywhere. Then I check into naval air stations. Well, there is a naval air station in Nevada. The only problem is it's at the exact opposite end of the state, and it's not decommissioned. So in 10 minutes, I found two things wrong with that document already. And I'm not really a super duper forensic document examiner. So I wanted to go through these documents with you and explain how many problems there are with this whole MJ12 sequence. And this is why we don't necessarily want to just jump to the conclusion that the MJ12 information is correct. Now, having said all that, I want to talk about some theories about what could be going on with all this. We all know about Roswell. Roswell is a big if. If Roswell involved the crash and recovery of a presumed flying saucer and presumed extraterrestrials, and we recovered bodies, maybe even a live alien, then it follows that a level of extreme secrecy would be imposed. And we want to put ourselves into the position of the people that would have been involved in the recovery in 1947, okay? They would have been freaked out. And their first reaction would have been, we can't let the American people know about this, okay? And so if something like that happened, or maybe some other UFO recovery or recoveries happened, it's reasonable to assume that extreme secrecy would be imposed. Now the question is, would there have been an MJ12 committee? Well, maybe, maybe not. It seems logical that if you had something strange like this happen, and you're faced with technology that's obviously way beyond anything that you have, then it might make a lot of sense to form a committee of top-level people to handle the intelligence, the counterintelligence, the management of public perceptions, to study the technology to do the biological studies of the bodies, it might make sense to form a committee to do that. But at the same time, you wouldn't necessarily have to do it that way. Okay, and we keep hearing about the material going to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, material going here and going there. Maybe if this happened, it was being handled through what I refer to as the defense matrix. The military branches, the intelligence agencies, and certain select people within these agencies handle one part of it or another. And if something like that happened, it's likely that the information would be compartmented, and person A wouldn't know what person B is working on. So you might have had there might have actually literally been an MJ-12, or it might have been called something else, or there might have been no MJ-12 per se, but if a saucer had been recovered, it was handled through the matrix of the Defense Department. Now, another theory that has been prevalent in the UFO field for a long time now, I mean, we're talking 30 years or more, is that there's a program to gradually acclimate the American public to the reality of alien visitation. Okay, and so now this is kind of Grant Cameron's theory too, that the documents are they're questionable, so they allow for plausible deniability. But at the same time, with these documents going into the public domain, these ideas are planted into the public's mind. And so gradually over a period of time, the American public becomes acclimated. We've had time to get used to the idea. And if you look at the way that UFO people and the public looked at UFOs, say back in the 1970s, and compare that with today, there's really no comparison. It's so much more common now for people to think that maybe we have recovered UFOs, maybe we have had contact with aliens. No, I'm not saying that we have, but it's easier for people to think about that and believe it. Another possibility with this whole MJ-12 affair is it's somehow related to counterintelligence. And I wrote a paper called MJ-12, the Counterintelligence Angle. And what that's about is that perhaps the recruitment of Bill Moore and possibly others was to engage in some kind of counterintelligence effort to maybe track leaked information from classified programs, maybe to smoke out spies like Soviet spies or Chinese spies, maybe to cover up or divert attention from classified programs. Now, when we get into the subject of counterintelligence, there are two possibilities. The counterintelligence activity could be in relation to what I consider to be conventional subjects, such as, fairly sophisticated technology on our part, like stealth or maybe Star Wars or satellite technology or something like that. The other counterintelligence possibility is that if the government does have super secret information about UFOs, that they undergo certain countermeasures to, for one thing, control the narrative, two, control the public perception about the problem, three, possibly divert attention away from the UFO reality that the government has information on. So, one side of it is a possible counterintelligence effort dealing with conventional technology. The other side of it is possible counterintelligence efforts involved with the UFO reality. Or it's possible that both could be going on. Now, I do want to point out that there's a school of thought with some of the most conservative UFO researchers and investigators that MJ12 is a hoax. Okay, and I just had a very good conversation with Barry Greenwood a couple of days ago, and he subscribes to the idea that the MJ12 documents that came out in the 1980s were a straight hoax. They were an effort by Bill Moore and possibly Richard Doty to quote unquote get rich. When MJ12 came out, they were going to write books, they were going to do TV shows, they were going to make movies, and Bill Moore was going to make a lot of money. Well, I pointed out that Bill Moore never did make any money out of the deal. And Barry Greenwood pointed out that, well, that's because Greenwood and company had exposed MJ12 as a fraud. But I've got a little bit of a problem with that because Moore received the MJ12 documents in December 1984, and he sat on them for 2.5 years. And the only reason why he released them was because Timothy Good was going to release them in his book, Above Top Secret. So that doesn't, at least in my mind, that doesn't quite correspond with somebody who's eager to get these documents into the public domain so that he can make a lot of money. Now, what is the legacy of MJ12? Conspiracy theories. Now, has anyone in the UFO community, in this group that's on this meeting tonight, has anyone ever noticed any conspiracy theories in the UFO world? We are overrun with conspiracy theories, and they've even seeped into the general public. It's like, if you don't want to believe a news story, then it's a conspiracy. Okay. Now, how does this relate to MJ12? In the 1980s, Richard Doty was very much involved in a number of intrigues with UFO researchers. And several UFO researchers came to a point that they did not trust Richard Doty. They did not trust Bill Moore. They thought that the MJ12 documents were a fraud. They felt that disinformation was being injected into the public domain. Okay. And this, now, as I pointed out before, the UFO field has always been somewhat suspicious of the Air Force and of the government. But this suspicion got on steroids in the late 1980s and into the 1990s. So this is what we have today. We have conspiracy theories. We have conspiracy thinking. We have mistrust of government. I mean, it's obvious and apparent that from a UFO standpoint, there's a great deal of mistrust of the government, and that even is applicable to the general public in terms of mistrusting the government. Another legacy of MJ12, and I pointed this out earlier, is Richard Doty. Richard Doty, interestingly, is the only Air Force Office of Special Investigations special agent out there telling everyone today that UFOs are real, the government recovered UFOs, the government has had a super secret program on UFOs going back to the 1940s. Now, I ask myself, why is it that Richard Doty is the only person saying this? Well, I don't know the answer to that, but it's true. And he's still with us today, and he's getting ready to come out with a book. It may come out in March. Now, let me tell you about sources of information. If you want to see most of the MJ12 documents, you want to go to majesticdocuments.com. That's majesticdocuments.com. Now, two of the strongest MJ12 believers are Robert Wood, who is a dear friend of mine, and Ryan Wood, his son. And they fortunately collected all of the documents that they felt were pertinent to the MJ12 idea, and they have posted them on their website, majesticdocuments.com, so you can go in there and look at them, at those. Now, as for secondary sources, we have Project Beta by Greg Bishop. That's a trade paperback. You can get it easily from Amazon.com or any reputable bookseller. There's a book that was published by William Moore. It's called the MJ12 Documents, an Analytical Report. I think if you go on Amazon, you might find a copy of it. It might be expensive because it's a rarity. Also, a brilliant paper was published in the 2007 MUFON Symposium Proceedings. It's called The Secret Pratt Tapes and the Origin of MJ12. It's by Barry Greenwood and Brad Sparks. And it goes over the sequence of events of Bill Moore approaching Robert Pratt to write a novel about MJ12. And Robert Pratt recorded the conversations. And this is part of the critic. A bunch of money out of MJ12. Also, Kevin Randall, who is a prominent UFO researcher, he has a book, Case MJ12, and he's another MJ12 critic. He'll tell you 102 reasons why MJ12 is a fraud. There's a book called X Descending by Christian Lambright. Half of the book is about the Paul Benowitz affair. And Paul Benowitz affair is very importantly related to the MJ12 subject. And then we also have Top Secret Magic by Stanton Friedman. And that's a book that can readily be purchased at Barnes & Noble website or Amazon website. So that's what I have for you tonight. I've gone on for a while here. I've covered a lot of territory, and I could talk all day and all night about this, but I'd like to close at this point and open it up to any questions. I'd be delighted to answer any questions that you might have.
Can anybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, good. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, any of you that want to unmute and go ahead and ask Tom some questions. That is just interesting. I loved it. I was able to do this on the phone, and now I'm kind of back. We're back up, but not really functioning yet. Jennifer is saying, thank you, Tom. And are you taking over at this point, Kevin, or are they still?
Just continue as you're doing until I'm ready.
Okay, so if somebody wants to unmute and ask a question, please be considerate, okay? I know you guys are great. You're great. Thank you for putting up with all of this tonight. So grateful. I've lost all power out here, so I'm literally freezing.
Oh,
Go ahead and chat.
I do have a question. A document that's kind of come into the fore relatively recently and featured on UFOjoe.com's website in the fourth part of his long blog series on the Wilson Davis leaks, and also the 1961 Special National Intelligence Estimate document. I think I've said that right. It's being referred to as the 1961 SNIE document. It also references Majestic 12 in a number of places. And Tom, I would love to know your thoughts about that document and whether or not, if you understand the origins of that document, both from the perspective of how it came about historically And then how did it come to the fore recently, if you know?
Yes, I'm familiar with that document, and it's been around for a long time. It had actually been posted on Bob Collins' website for years. And Robert Collins was Condor. He had the bird name Condor, and he was Condor on the UFO Cover-Up Live program. And much of the popular beliefs about the government's knowledge of UFOs and aliens comes from what Robert Collins said on the UFO Cover-Up Live program. And if you go on my blog, I actually wrote down a transcript of everything that Falcon and Condor said. Now, as far as that document goes, I'm not absolutely sure, but I believe that it was received by Timothy Cooper, and it was sent with one or two other documents for verification. And whoever got back to him and got back to them said that that document was authentic. Now, but the document has problems. If you look at it, it looks to me like it's a cut and paste job. And maybe somebody took parts of a genuine document and did some cutting and pasting and stuck it together, and it is what that document is today. Now, I don't remember exactly why UFO Joe brought that up at the time that he did. He was writing a story about the Admiral Wilson document. And all I can tell you is that some people were very concerned about that document because they believe that it included very highly classified information. But then you have other people like Paul Dean, who he's the Robert Todd of our time. And he's an Australian researcher. And he's a terrific documentary researcher. And he's found 20 things wrong with it. Okay. So here we are back to the usual situation where the document looks interesting. It has interesting information in it. It even mentions MJ12, but then you get people that know what they're talking about and they can find 20 things wrong with it. So, you know, and one thing I meant to mention to you all was that what indications are there that maybe MJ12 is real? Well, there are a couple. There is a letter from a person by the name of John Andrews. And John Andrews was a tester model designer. And he had a lot of interaction with Ben Rich at Lockheed. He knew a lot of people in the aerospace field. And this John Andrews person told a story, and it's in a letter to Lee Graham, about how someone that he knew had been stationed in Turkey, and that from their station in Turkey, they were sending radar returns to MJ12. Okay. Now, this is hearsay, you know, it's secondhand, but that's an indication. Maybe there's something to it. Okay. Now, I've had some limited communication with Richard Doty, and Richard Doty has said that he had, and had people that he knew had heard about MJ12 for years. Now, the problem is, what if MJ12 has nothing to do with UFOs? It might have, maybe MJ12 exists, but it's not a UFO group, okay? And there's another indication. It's kind of a, you get these little tidbits, you know, little possibilities, but there's not a lot. Bill Moore believed that MJ12 was attached to the National Security Council. And Richard Doty had actually given him a name of a person that was, I think, working with, at the time, Zbigniew Brzezinski, and on the National Security Council, either with the National Security Council or in relation to it, and that this was connected with MJ12. So I've got 2 or 3, indications, but we have no really firm evidence or proof.
Thank you, Tom, for the answer about the SNIE document. I'll definitely go read the blog.
Well, go to Paul Dean's blog. Look up Paul Dean on the internet, and if you want to see what's wrong with that document, he can fill you in on that.
Can't type fast enough to get all your great information.
Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me, Tom?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Did anybody else want to ask any other questions? You have to unmute yourself to ask the question because you were muted. Okay, well, I guess we're not getting any other people through, either that or they're not unmuting. So let me just apologize to all of you for what happened here. We're not really sure what happened, but our producer, Kevin, was able to get on the phone with Spectrum and get us back up and running and back into this, which is just amazing. Rather than me going through this whole process of the MUFON's existence and what we do and everything, let me just say that next month we'll have all of this dealt with so that we don't have this problem again. We'll see and find out what did happen. We do have a storm here, a lot of rain, and it's very cold. And I have no heat out here in the studio, so I think it's like 29 degrees out there, something like that. But anyway, I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank you, Tom, so much for being here with us. And to get in touch with Tom, if you want to continue to ask some questions, I just want to put this up right here. You would go to tomwhitmoreblog.wordpress.com if you'd like to continue to talk with him or share, ask questions. Thank you for being with us. And thank you all for coming and hanging in there. I really appreciate that very much. And I guess our next United MUFON is going to be on the 30th of January, and we will put information up. Although we had all these issues tonight, we were still being recorded the whole time because somehow or other, Tom's recording was doing just fine, even though we lost all this power here. So this will go up on YouTube. It'll go up on Enigmatic Anomalies, and you can watch the whole thing or share it with someone. Again, and all of our little bloopers will be up there too. So
I hope you'll edit all this.
Oh, why? It's more fun. I mean, after all, it is 2020, right? And so, but anyway, thank you all again. And I guess I'll just say, let's do an over and out. Thanks for hanging in there, Tom. You did a great job. Well, admitting people and all that you were doing the whole time. So I do appreciate that very much. Okay. So you all have a Merry Christmas and a wonderful New Year. And we'll see you next year here at United MUFON.
Could I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
Where can we find this recording?
The recording will be up on YouTube on Enigmatic Anomalies. And also on MUFONmeetings.com.
Okay.
All righty.
We're writing it down. Gotcha.
Okay. So MUFONmeetings.com and also our other channel, Enigmatic Anomalies.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate all your time.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Good night,
Thank you.
everybody.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Good night.